Alright, inshallah, we'll open up, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد وهو على كل شيء قدير وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. أما بعد. I begin by saying أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. And we say, I seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from shaitan, your cursed. For verily shaitan he is Abdul-Walee Mubin. He is an avowed and declared enemy to mankind. So we seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from him. We begin by saying, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most merciful God. For truly and verily all praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We praise him and seek only his help and his forgiveness. We also seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the evil of our nafs, which is our carnal desires. For the nafs, the carnal desires, it is inclined to do evil. And again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in chapter 12, verse 53, that the nafs is inclined to do evil except by the rahmah bi rabbi, except the rahmah of the Rabbi, except by the mercy of your Lord. And how do we obtain Allah's rahmah? Ati Allah wa Rasul la'alakum turhamun. Obey Allah, the Quran, obey the messenger, meaning the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, la'alakum turhamun, so that you may be of those who obtain Allah's rahmah. We also seek refuge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the sayyati amalina, those deeds and those actions that are not sanctioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, and those deeds and actions that are not sanctioned by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in the Sunnah. Those whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills to be guided to Islam, and Islam means submission to the will and commandment of Allah, no one can lead them astray. And those whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills to be misguided off the Sirat al-Mustaqim, again the Sirat al-Mustaqim is the path of Islam, guided by the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, no one can guide. We bear witness that there is no God but Allah, the one God who has no partners. And we bear witness that Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is the slave of this messenger. Amma ba'd. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Today we'll be continuing on the subject matter of the Plantation Psychosis Willie Lynch papers. Okay? We are talking about a system, right, or an exercise, or something that was systematically, purposely, and methodically done to erase a people. And with this being done to them, we had some type of psychological psychosis, right? A derangement, right? Or a loss of contact of reality. Okay? So we're trying to break down this system, trying to break down this exercise, what was done to us, so we can understand how we have been affected, what type of sicknesses have been inflicted upon us, and how we can change these sicknesses, inshallah. So we're just continuing from the last week, inshallah. So we'll just continue from this book. And we'll be reading from page 3. The section that we'll be talking about today is Let's Make a Slave. Let's Make a Slave by the Black Arcade Liberation Library, 1970. Okay? So we're going to read from a statement by Frederick Douglass, okay, pertaining to the slavery, the plantation, the relationship between the master and the slave, and some of the things that were done or some of the things that were looked for, you know, in dealing with this master-slave relationship. It was the interest and the business of slave owners to study human nature, and the slave nature in particular, with a view of practical results. And many of them attained astonishing proficiency in this direction. They had to deal not with earth, wood, and stone, but they were dealing with men. And by every regard, they had for their own safety and prosperity. And by every regard, they had for their own safety and prosperity. They needed to know the material on which they were to work. So the material that they were using was human beings, or African Americans. So they wanted to find out all the tactics possible and how to utilize, you know what I'm saying, this material properly. Conscious of the injustice and the wrong they were, every hour perpetuating and knowing what they themselves would do, were they the victims of such wrongs, they were constantly looking for the first signs of dreaded retribution. So we're saying that they were always conscious of their injustice that they were doing to this other human race. Constantly aware of this injustice, so therefore they were always paranoid about any type of retribution of the things that were being done, that they were doing to other people. So you know, they say guilty conscience. So the slave owner, he knows in his mind all of these things that he's done, all these things that he's perpetuated on the people. So he's always looking for that retribution. He's always on guard because he has that guilty conscience. They watched, therefore, with skilled and practiced eyes, and learned to read with great accuracy the state of mind and the heart of a slave. So in order to find out if a slave is tripping or find out if there's something going on, they try to learn the ways of the slave, his temperaments, his attitudes, his emotions, his facial expressions, to see if he's tripping or not. Right? So they studied us. They watched, therefore, with skilled and practiced eyes, and learned to read with great accuracy the state of mind and heart of the slaves through his sable face. Usually sobriety, apparent abstraction, sullenness, and indifference, indeed, any mood out of the common way, afforded grounds for suspicion and inquiry. So they would study, right? And again, this was a statement written by Frederick Douglass. And he was saying that with regards to the master-slave relationship, the slave owner, he would look for suspicion, right, in the slave to see if there was some type of emotional feeling of the slave because of what is happening to him. So they look for his eyes, they look for his mood, they look for this any type of anger, right? And this is how they try to find out, okay, we're going to test the water. We're going to throw something out there and see how the people react. Just like right now they're doing exercises, right, or killings or whatnot to see how the people will react, right? Because they're looking for suspicion, right? Who's going to do an uprising? Who's going to do some type of retribution, right? Who's going to do some type of revolution, right? Because they know they're guilty, right? And they're waiting for their retribution, okay? Again, let's make a slave. It is a study of the scientific process of man breaking and slave making, right? Let's make a slave, right? And again, when we talk about making a slave, we're not just talking about making a slave physically to the point that you in shackles and whatnot, you in a jail, but we're talking about making a slave mentally, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, being a slave, right? So they want to make a slave, right? It doesn't matter about the body. They're worried about your mind, your psychological, your mental, right? Your spiritual, right? Because if you control these aspects of your life, then the body will follow, right? They say first the mind, then the body will follow, right? So they have your mindset, and then boom, your body will follow, okay? So that's why making a slave, you want to make him mentally a slave, okay? Let's Make a Slave is a study of scientific process of man breaking and slave making. Breaking a man down, right? You want to break him down, and then you want to make him into a slave, right? So it's called a breaking process. It describes the rational and results of the Anglo-Saxons' ideas and methods of assuring the master-slave relationship, right? So they came up with this technique, they came up with this process to make sure and to ensure they have a beautiful master-slave relationship, right? Mentally, right? So the slave, the African-American, they want him to have a mentality wherein he knows that he's a slave, this is the master, and thus his whole life is based on that reality, his warped reality, his lost concept of reality, because somebody gave him that false reality. But that's what they want his reality to be. Okay? Let's Make a Slave. The origin and development of the social being called the Negro. Right? How do we make a Negro? Let us make a slave. What do we need? Okay, so now they're telling you, what is it that we need in order to make a slave? Right? So he's telling you the formulas, the processes and whatnot, and what it is that you need to do in order to make a beautiful and productive slave. First of all, we need a black nigger man. So we have a man. Okay? So first of all, we need a black nigger man. I'm just reading from here. The man, we say he's also a husband. Okay? First of all, we need a black nigger man and a pregnant nigger woman. So now we have a nigger man and a nigger woman. So we have a husband and a wife. And the reason I'm doing this is because we're talking about family. Right? TAUHEED movement, what we talking about? Family, life, happiness. TAUHEED movement, family, life, and happiness. First thing is family, right? And we're talking about family because one of our creeds and our models of TAUHEED movement is 66 verse 6, right? What does it say? Oh, you who believe, save yourself and your family from a fire whose fuel is men and stones. So we're talking about family because the plantation psychosis, the intent was to break up the family. You break up the family, you break up that nucleus, the way that Allah created it, man, wife, and children, offspring and whatnot, you break up that, you know what I'm saying, how it's supposed to be, everything's jacked up. So the first thing he says is go get a man, go get the woman, right? So he's telling you, attack the family. The first thing people do is attack the family. Even with shaitan, the first thing you want to do, attack the family. Okay? Because when you attack the family, when there's no structure, when there's no husband, there's no wife, there's no leadership, there's no compassion, right? Everything's jacked up. So you attack the family, because that's where the structure's at, in the family. So again, what do we need? We need a black nigger man, the man. We need a pregnant nigger woman, right? The woman, the wife, right? And her baby nigger boy. So the offspring. So we take the whole family. We take the man, the woman, and the child. Okay? This is what they do. This is their system. Second, we will use the same basic principle that we use in breaking a horse, combined with some more sustaining factors. So we're going to use the same tactics that we use to break a horse. We're going to use some more sophisticated methods because we deal with human beings that have more of an intelligence than the horse. But we're going to use the same tactics, the way we break a horse, right? When you get that Mustang, he's kicking, he's bucking, right? That's why I call him a buck. We call black people bucks, right? You get that horse and it's bucking, right? But sooner or later, after they train it, right? They whip it and put the thing on it, and the next thing you know, it's just whatever they wanted to do, right? After they break that buck. So they say we use the same tactics when we break a horse, the same tactics we use to break an African-American man. Understand that. What we do with the horse is that we break them from one form of life to another. That is, we reduce them from their natural state of nature, whereas nature provides them with a natural capacity to take care of their needs and the needs of their offspring. So he said that the first thing that they do is take away and reduce their state. So we're going to take a man. He's a man. I'm supposed to be the king of the jungle. I'm supposed to be, you know, provider of my family. All of these things. But I'm going to reduce him, right? And I'm going to take him out of his natural state. Your natural state, you can go out there and provide for yourself. You might climb up a tree, go get a coconut, whatever it may be, you can eat. You ain't got to go fishing or whatever, right? But we're going to reduce him and take him out of his natural state and take away all of his natural resources. Take away all your natural resources. You don't even have nothing, right? To the point that he's dependent, right, on slave masters. We take away all these things. Take him out of his natural state, right? He's supposed to be the king of the jungle. He's supposed to be this and you know what not. But we take him out of his natural state, take away all his natural resources, right? So therefore, he could be dependent. This is a systematic exercise that was done. And when you understand what was done, you can understand what was done to us. Some may say, man, that wasn't done to me. Oh, that don't pertain to me, right? Somehow, some way, consciously or subconsciously, we have been affected because this is something that has been transferred down and trickled down from generation to generation. It's in our DNA. It's in our genes. Okay? Right? And he says to take them from their natural state, whereas nature provides them to provide for them and their offspring. So now you can't provide for your offspring. Again, the family. I take you out in the natural state of a man to be able to provide, to be able to protect your wife, and to be able to provide for your kid. I take you out in the natural state. You don't have none of that now. So all the attributes of the things that go with you being a man or what defines you as a man, we take all that away. Or they take it all away. We break the natural string of independence, so they break the string of independence from them and thereby create a dependency state. So we take all these natural things, you remove all of these things, you remove them from the independent state of being able to like, well, I don't need nothing from nobody, right? When you don't need nothing from nobody, can't nobody tell you nothing, right? If I got bread, right, it's a little bit harder for you to tell me something, right? Like, bro, bro, I got bread, you can't tell me nothing. But if I ain't got no bread and somebody trying to tell me something, I might want to listen a bit because I'm trying to get some bread. But when I got it, I don't need nothing from nobody. I'm independent, I don't need nothing from you. You ain't got to tell me nothing, you got to tell me how to do it because I'm already doing it. I got bread, I'm independent, you can't tell me nothing. Right? But when the shoe is on the other foot, when I'm dependent on you, then I'm in a humble state, I'm in a docile state, and even also almost in a begging state because I'm dependent. And thereby create a dependency state so that we may be able to get them from, we may be able to get from them useful production for our business and our pleasures. So he said, once we do all of this, we reduce them from the natural state, right? Natural resources and whatnot, and then they become dependent upon us, right? We want this, right? So that they can be useful production for us, right? For our businesses and our pleasures. See, when you put all these things in motion and you make people dependent, right? Instead of being independent, now you're dependent, right? You're dependent on Uncle Sam, you're dependent on Charlie, right? And again, break this down. We're going to talk about this another day. It might go into here. But it said that they do this so they can have us, right, for their business and their pleasures. Okay? Y'all don't know, but pimping and whatnot came from slavery days, right? Because the women, they wanted to gain money, and then the John, John Smith and all them, the Johns, right? They was already having sex with the women and whatnot. They was already raping and whatnot. So they put it upon themselves to come up with a game plan to make some money out of this. Okay, but that's a whole nother subject. But for their business and their pleasures, because they were the ones raping all the women for their pleasure. So when you have a docile people, when you have a dependent people, right, you reduce this man from being the husband, the protector, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the men are the maintainers, the protectors of the women, right? Somebody, abusing your wife, whipping your wife, right? Raping your wife, whatever, spitting on her, whatever, calling her, you can't even do nothing about it. You have reduced your state, right? We're not even a man no more. This is psychologically jacking us up. We want to be a man, but we can't even do it because we've been reduced. We're dependent. We're fearful. We're scared with some of the tactics we're going to find out later on what they use, right? So what do you think this did to the woman? Right? What do you think she did to the woman when she's now dependent on Uncle Charlie, Uncle Sam, right? And he come over here with these pleasures and whatnot. She trying to make it. She trying to fend for her, right? And her child, right? So she's gonna try to do anything necessary because she's seen, her husband getting beat, killed, or whatnot. We're gonna get into later on. So all of this is psychological. So they say, man, survival of the fittest. Well, I'm gonna do anything, to provide for me and my child or my daughter. This is a mentality that has been, trickled down. Right? Women still saying it today. Well, I'm going to do what I need to do for me and my child. And they mean that. They're going to do anything that they need to do to provide for them and their child. How come? This goes all the way back to here. Because we got people over here, who wanted pleasure. Okay, but that's a whole other subject. We're going to get another day about people popping and whatnot. Okay? But again, the man, the woman, the child, the family. You jacking up the family. You jacking up the mentality of the man, right? You jacking up the mentality of the woman because now she's supposed to be dependent on her husband. She can't depend on her husband. Now she got this self-hate of her husband. She hates her husband, right? Because he can't protect her. The child, what does he see? Daddy can't do nothing. Mama doing this, so therefore what does he learn? Whatever he sees, whatever craziness that he sees, whatever deranged, process and things that he sees because of all of this, right? That's what he takes with him in his DNA, in his genes, and he passes it on. Okay? It's crazy. A process.
TAUHEED. TAUHEED.